Do you want to make your own Fortnite games that you can launch to millions of players and make tons of money and do this full time? Yes, you do, but it's so hard. The tools you have to learn and install, and then the programming and figuring out how to even launch a game. I got you. This is the ultimate beginner guide to UEFN and Fortnite. This is the starting point. You're gonna build an entire full game, a first-person shooter gun game in Fortnite with coding, and you don't have to have any background in game development or programming. I'm gonna teach you everything. All right, so first things first is you need to go to create.fortnite.com, create a Fortnite creator account. You've got to have an Epic Games account already. I'm not gonna show you how to do that. Super easy stuff. Next thing is open up the Epic Games launcher. And if you search for UEFN in the search bar, you're gonna see Unreal Editor for Fortnite. Download it, easy peasy, super cool. Fortnite has to be updated as well. That's it, that's all you need. Also, you need to have a Windows computer. And let me show you one more really cool thing. So over here in the library in the Epic Games launcher, you're gonna go down until you find Unreal Editor for Fortnite. Click those three little dots there. And what you're gonna do is go to Manage. And then where it says Create Desktop Shortcut, click Create. And if you don't see these three dots here, it's because your UEFN or Fortnite is running. You have to close them first before you can manage the game. And then your icon will be on your desktop, so you don't have to load it through the Epic Games launcher. And with that being said, how about we create a brand new project? So double click that shiny new icon. When UEFN loads, you'll probably be presented with a screen like this. Let's get started. Boom. And what we're gonna do is go to Island Templates and click blank. Now here's the thing. They've got a lot of really cool projects you can start off with from Fortnite here. They've got brand templates, so Fall Guys, Lego, Ninja Turtles, and they've got templates for that as well too, the different game modes. And then they've got these really cool learning projects where you can figure out how Epic Games built some of these experiences so you can learn some different things. You should just open them and play them and click the run button because they're lots of fun and a great way to learn. But for us, we're gonna go over here to Island Templates, blank, okay? And what we're going to do is give it a name. And what I'm going to do is create a project called FPS Beginner Game. You can call yours whatever you want. And we're gonna leave Unreal Revision Control turned off. This is a feature that allows your project to be backed up and work with team members and where the whole teams can submit features and things back and forth to each other. But for now, keep it unchecked and click Create. Boom, and there you have it. Your very first project is created. And you know what's even crazier is you can just click Launch Session and it plays out of the box. Movements, throw some guns in there, it's like super easy. So go ahead and click that button, Launch Session, just to play your very first game. Did you play the game? Did you run around? Exciting, but also not super exciting. So let's look at the Unreal Editor layout here. You're gonna see a few different things. If your editor does not look like mine, what you can do is you can go to Window and you can go to Load Layout, Default Editor Layout. It will reload all the windows. And that's also great if you mess things up or close out a window and don't know what you're doing quite just yet. A few things is you can use the WASD keys on the keyboard as you right click in the window to move around. So I'm right clicking right now and I'm using my first person shooter controls, my Fortnite controls, to move around the editor. You can also scroll in and out with a mouse wheel and you can just fly around. One other little handy trick I love to do is click on something with the left mouse and press the F key for focus. Ooh, this is really nice when you're zoomed out and on the right-hand side here in the outliner, you're like, oh, I want to find an object, click it and press F, and you're zoomed in there. We have these folders down here at the bottom left. As you can see, Fortnite, FPS Beginner Game content, that's our content, Epic Games content, etc. On the right-hand side is your outliner. This is where you place objects into your world here. And you can select the object, and down here below you're going to see details. So I have this player spawner selected, and you can see that it has a location, a rotation, and a scale. This is its location in the world, and you can change them down. You can change these numbers down here if you want. I just put a 0 in there, and I moved it closer. And if I move it like this, you're going to see the numbers change here as well too. And in this world, we've got a 0, 0, 0 point, right? And we can go into the negative in any direction. We can go into the positive in any direction. Those numbers don't really matter. That's just your positioning in this digital world here. So, all right, now what I want you to do is click this Fortnite folder and open that up. First off, you should play around with all of these things in here, drag things into the project, see what they do. And what we are gonna do to get started here is we're gonna go look at prefabs. You can also look at props here. These are pre-built items that Fortnite has given us to be able to play into our game. So you don't have to spend $1 million building all these cool assets. They've been given to you for free and you can make money off these things. What? That's crazy, I know. So you're gonna see all these folders here and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So what I'm gonna do is expand the prefabs folder and I'm gonna click the top one here, Anarchy Acres, scroll all the way down to the bottom, holding shift, and I'm gonna select this. And now with all of these selected here, you can actually scroll down and see all these really cool prefabs that are available to us here. And you can drag them in the project and just play your game. What we're gonna do is pick the underground. Now you can pick any one that you want. In fact, I recommend that. Don't listen to me. Go drag in your own little prefab and bring it into the project. I'm gonna grab this underground right here and just drag it in. It usually takes a second to load. Now I'm gonna right click and look around here and you're gonna see this giant object that's just been placed in our world. And what I can do is go inside of here and you're gonna see this pre-built world. And so now what I wanna do is grab these player spawners. See how they're not inside the building? I wanna bring them in the building. So I have that selected here, the player spawner. I'm gonna click the red arrow and just the blue arrow and bring it up, move it around. And it doesn't have to be perfect right now. And if I press E on the keyboard, that goes into rotate mode. And you can see this buttons up here is selected as well too in blue. That means you can rotate the direction. And right now it's on the snap. So with this blue selected, it means that we are snapping in place on a particular angle. If you turn it off, it'll let you rotate however you want, like so. Control Z to undo. I'm gonna turn it back on and just face this direction here. This will be where a player starts. And on the second player spawn pad, I'm gonna delete that because it's easier just to select this first one. And if I hold down Alt on the keyboard while dragging, it's gonna make a duplicate copy. Okay, my second player spawn. And I can press E to go into rotate mode or W into move mode, but E into rotate. I'm just gonna rotate it facing each other and we're gonna save. And one more thing we're gonna do just for fun, just to get our feet wet here, is we're gonna put a gun in here. Yes, a weapon, a murder device. And I'm gonna go to my devices folder here in the Fortnite folder, and I'm gonna type in placer for item placer. And look at this table here. This looks like it needs a gun. Like you should be able to pick up a gun here and do some murdering. All right, so we're gonna take the item placer, and I know it looks all funky here, right? But what we're gonna do with the item placer selected is we're gonna go here to the right-hand side and see where it says item list. I'm just gonna select one item, okay? And I'm gonna type in, let's say Striker, the modular Striker AR. This is a ballistic weapon, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And there it is. Pretty cool, right? They've just put this really cool gun. And I'm gonna go into E for rotate mode. Remember, E's rotate, or you click the little circle up here. And I'm just gonna rotate it once 90 degrees. I'm gonna press W to go back into move mode. I'm just gonna drag it down until it looks about right. It doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to look about right. Click off of that to deselect it. And there's our gun, pretty cool. If you wanted, you could add more item placers, add some ammunition, things like that. But we're gonna call that good for now. What I want you to do is save your project and click launch session to play your very first game with a gun. You're gonna be the only player in it, but that's okay. Go ahead and do that now. And look at that, crazy. You just built your very first game like that easy. We dragged in an object and we pressed play and we put a gun in there, okay? One thing we wanna do here before we play is in Fortnite, make sure that you have windowed full screen on or just windowed mode, okay? As you're going back and forth between UEFN, it may glitch out a little bit, so I always play in windowed mode here. And what I'm gonna do is you can press the Windows key to kind of get out of the editor here, of the game, and you can drag it around here at the top. And then press escape, and you can click start game. But check this out, if I walk over to my gun, I can pick it up using the default Fortnite keys here. So here's my gun, and I'm shooting. Now notice that we're not in first person mode. We haven't activated that yet, but that's pretty cool. We've got a gun, we picked it up, and you did all this. You did it yourself. Really easy stuff, right? If we have a gun, if you give a Skibidi a gun, he's gonna need someone to kill. My son would correct me. He'd be like, Dad, that's not Skibidi. That's Camera Head Man or something. I can't remember what he's called. Let's put a bad guy in here, all right? Let's do that. So this is a pretty easy thing to do. What I'm gonna do is here in my Fortnite folder, you have your devices, right? I'm gonna type in the word NPC, and you're gonna see that there's an NPC spawner. Just drag that in right here. And there we go, we got Jonesy. I'm gonna rotate him with the E key, okay? And here is Jonesy, he's looking so fly and fresh. Now, I can't make him attack us yet because I need to give him some data or information, okay? So there's not a whole lot we can do just yet. He will spawn if we run the game as is, and you can kill him, but he needs to fight back. We don't want to shoot innocent bystanders. This isn't Grand Theft Auto, okay? Go to our content folder at the bottom left here. This is our folder, and normally I would put a bunch of my own folders in here to organize the project. I don't care right now. We're just trying to have fun and build. So what I'm gonna do is right-click, go to Artificial Intelligence, okay? Remember, you have to be in your content folder, Artificial Intelligence, NPC Character Definition. And we're gonna call this Bad Guy, all right? Now what I'm gonna do is double click the bad guy, and you're gonna see a series of options where it says NPC Character Type, Custom, all right? I wanna change this to a guard. I want the pre-built Fortnite code for making a guard who chases you and shoots you and do things like that, okay? And you can change some of these other things around, like the accuracy, their health, what team are they on? That's the other important thing. I want to change the team to wildlife and creature. I could put it on the other team if it was a team-based game, but then I'd have to change more settings. If I just make it wildlife and creature, he's going to try and kill me automatically, okay? And here's another fun one, is the cosmetic identifier. This is where you can pick the character itself. If you have a favorite Fortnite character, put him in here. I'm just gonna go down and pick a random one, Red Jade. I don't know why, it's just what popped up here. Now, I need to give my bad guy a weapon, right? It needs to be fair. So here's where we're gonna add a new modifier. So where it says modifiers, click the plus button. And then down at the bottom, you're gonna see a new drop down here, okay? And what I want to do is put in an inventory modifier and then expand it. And what I want to do is go down to inventory, and this is where I'm going to give them a weapon. So I'll probably just give them some type of modular shotgun. Modular combat shotgun. Again, this is another ballistic weapon, which we'll talk about later. I'm gonna give this dude a shotgun. Okay? And then back in the project, so I closed out of that window, back here in the NPC spawner, in the details, NPC character definition, I'm gonna select bad guy. Okay? And you'll see that it's now been populated with Red Jade, whoever she is. And now you can push your changes and start the game. All right, I'm gonna grab my weapon, run over here, and there's my bot. Hopefully it shoots at me if I give it a little shot there. She seems a little bit confused. She's stuck in the wall here. That happens sometimes. There we go. And I'm gonna shoot her, and she's toast. Now, it should respawn automatically because that's the settings on the NPC spawner. So I'm gonna press escape here. Now, going back to UEFN, if for some reason, like it doesn't spawn the character, but you see it on the screen like walking around or something, but like just like maybe the footsteps, or you see like on the map a red dot, it may be like spawning underneath here somewhere. And so you're gonna wanna make sure on your NPC spawner that you turn off spawn through walls. Sometimes you want it to be like that, and other times you don't. In our case, we don't. There we go, we've got an enemy, we've got a gun, and things are looking really good right now in terms of the game itself, right? This didn't take a long time to figure these things out. And I'd also encourage you over here in your NPC character definition file that we created to go and just add new modifiers, change things around, because you can add a modifier here at the bottom. There's all kinds of different options available: patrolling, navigation, movement, perception, effects. There's a bunch of really cool things you can add to your bot here. Now, let's go ahead and add first-person shooter mode. It is incredibly, incredibly complicated, so you need to pay very close attention, all right? Are you ready for this? You're gonna go to your devices, and you're gonna type in CAM, C-A-M, and then you're gonna grab the first-person camera. and save it. That's it. It wasn't hard at all. Everyone's gonna have first-person camera now, which is really cool. And so go ahead and run the game and see what it's like to play in first person. And let's test out our first person mode. So here we are, first person, picking up the weapon. Ooh, there's the bad guy. And there we go. This is working great. Pretty cool, right? Now notice how like these walls are like indestructible. I don't want that, right? That's not realistic. That's not what I want in my game. So I want to fix that. I also want to add some more lighting in here. So let's do that now. I'm going to go to escape, end game. And first things first is let's go to the island settings, like so. And then here in your island settings, you can adjust a lot of things. How scoring works, some lighting things, like there's 1,000 options there. Maybe not 1,000, but there's a lot. What we're gonna look for is environment, ENVI, environmental damage. Instead of all, I just wanna turn it off, okay? And if I was building out this game from scratch, I might not do this completely because maybe I want my bench to blow up or my boxes or whatever. And then I could leave environmental damage on, and then I can just go to the individual objects themselves, the walls and stuff, and I can turn that off. But we're not going to do that manually. We're just gonna turn it off for the whole game to make it easy. Now I did notice that it's kind of dark when you play the game, and you may want that, that's fine, but I wanna show you how to add some simple lighting into your map, just in case you'd like to make it a little bit brighter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here to this plus cube button here, go to lights, and I'm gonna add a point light. And a point light is just what it is. It's a light that's at a point, and it has some attenuation, and if I drag it close to a wall, for instance, you can see how it's lighting up. Now, is that realistic? No, just a random spot on the wall. So what I can do is, on my point light that I have selected, okay, right here, I can go over to the details panel, and I can change things around, like the intensity, for instance. Like I can make it brighter, and I can make the attenuation radius like even bigger as well too, and just make it a little more natural, and move it away from the wall, okay? And make it even a little more brighter, like so. And then what I can do is make a few of these just to brighten it up. You can make as many as you want, actually. Okay. I encourage you to play around with these settings for the lights. There's different types of lights, spotlights, things like that. Point lights are a great way just to do some quick lighting indoors. You can use them outdoors as well too. And so we've got our character, we've got our first person shooter features in there with the camera. We got some lighting. You know, I think now it's time to actually build the gun game. We're gonna write some code, your very first code. If it's scary and terrifying, don't worry. We're gonna get through this together. I'm with you, okay? Okay, now before we actually write code, it's important to understand what our game does. Now we could do this without code. It would be more work and take a little more clicking and dragging, but we're gonna do it with code because that's where you get the most customization in your games. But what I wanna do is design, at least in theory, what we want to accomplish. Now this is a gun game, okay? So we know this is a gun game, and how does a gun game work? Okay, you spawn with a weapon. When you get an elimination, you move on to the next weapon. Whoever gets to the last weapon first, that's kind of funny, last weapon first. Last weapon first wins the game. And then probably some more things like when you die, you get the same weapon you left off with, right? We don't want to just start from the beginning. We want to keep track of the weapon that you're currently at. And then what we want to do is if you win, the round ends. Game restarts for everybody, okay? So we're building a full game, fully featured game, the package, something you could submit. I like this. I'm gonna use this list as my reference of what I'm going to do and accomplish. So let's go ahead and do this now. I'm taking this off the screen here, and we're gonna write our very first line of code, but first some cleanup, okay? This camera device, okay, it's just kind of in the way. Player can't see it, but I like to move my things in a place where players can't see. Just get all my devices and things in a certain area. So I'm just gonna move this out here for now. Move it down like this. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create our very first verse file. And you don't have to have any programming experience to do this. Got to reiterate that. I'm going to show you everything. And don't worry if you don't understand either. It just takes time and it's going to be fun. So what we're going to do is we're gonna go to Verse up here at the top and Verse Explorer, okay? And you're gonna see a little tab pops up here. It may pop up somewhere else on your screen. You can just put it here or wherever you want. And this is where we can see our Verse files. And what I'm gonna do is on this top thing right here, I'm gonna right click, say add new Verse file to project. You can also create or create empty. Create's gonna give it this boilerplate, which we do want. And I'm gonna call this one gun game. So gungame.verse and click create. And if I go to my content folder, you're gonna see gun game, you're gonna see device here, right? And what's really cool about this is I can actually take this and drag it into my project. And is this visible in game? I'm gonna turn that off. I don't want it visible in game, and I do want it enabled at game start. But this is your device. This is your code, your custom code, and you have to drag it in the project for it to work, okay? If you're a programmer from other scenes, you know, right, you just compile your code, there's a bunch of files, and it does its thing. In this case, we wanna drag them into the project. And then you're gonna see this button here that says Verse. We're gonna click that. It's gonna load up Visual Studio Code, okay? This is the editor that shipped with UEFN. It's free. Lots of developers use this in the world for lots of different things, okay? Gungame.verse, and then you're gonna see different files in here related to the project or Fortnite itself. We don't care about that. We care about our one particular file here. And I'm gonna delete these comments. You can look at them and read them on your own, okay? But what you should know, you don't have to remember, is this using keyword is importing code for you to use, stuff that Epic Games has already built for us, so we don't have to like do it ourselves. And this is the name of our device, okay? Everything in Fortnite is like a device with UEFN and Verse, and it's a creative device, okay? And the syntax of how all this works, you just have to memorize it, and it's okay if you forget, because you know it'll take months to figure out, and you can always copy and paste, no big deal. And this is the most important thing I want you to understand at this moment is this onBegin function here, onBegin, is gonna be called automatically. When the game starts, this is going to be called. And then what it's doing is it's printing out hello world, 2 + 2 = 2 + 2. So it's taking some text and then it's actually doing some math in here, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I want you to come in here where it says print hello world inside the double quotes, and I want you to change this to whatever you want. Say, yo, what's up, bro? Okay, and save that. Yo, what's up, bro? And you're gonna see the double quotes there, okay? And I'm gonna go back to UEFN, go to Verse, build Verse code. There's also a shortcut for that, Control-Shift-B, but build Verse code, save. It's gonna build it, compile it, and now, because this device is in here, when I run the game, it should automatically print these things up here for me, because this happens when the game starts. So we're gonna do that now. Our very first line of code, we're gonna test it out, just make sure that Verse is working. Let's do that. Yo, what's up, bro? 2 + 2 = 4. So it did work. Now I wanna show you one more thing that's kind of cool. So what you can do when it comes to Verse is you don't have to push your changes when you're writing Verse code if that's all you're changing. So if I change this to it's on like Donkey Kong, right? If I say that, save it, and I go to Verse, build Verse code, all right, and push Verse changes, you're gonna notice that it pushes very, very quickly. Whereas when you put other things in the game like objects or assets or new devices, you got to go through the whole build process of pushing changes, and that can take a really long time. But Verse just takes a few seconds. So if I start this off now, it's on like Donkey Kong. So that's how quickly it happens. So we're doing good. You've just written your very first lines of Verse. You're now a programmer. Congratulations. You can go around, you can tell your mom, your grandma, anyone that you're a programmer. Good for you. Okay, you did it. Now, one of the things with programming is always knowing what you're working on, because it can get easy to get lost. So this is our guide, remember? So the first thing we want to do, okay, is spawn with a weapon. Now, I could have changed this around in different order, but in my brain, this is the logical order of events. I took the game idea, the design, and I said, from start to finish, how does it work? What do I need to build? So spawn with a weapon is number one. Well, we're not currently doing that, right? We're not spawning with a weapon. There is a weapon inside, but that's not how a gun game works. On a gun game, you don't pick up a weapon off the ground. So I'm gonna delete, or a table. I'm gonna delete this weapon, and we wanna create a way to have the player spawn with a weapon. So what I'm going to do is go to my devices, and I'm going to search for item granter, like so, and just drag it out here. Now, this is what's going to give weapons to the player. And we know that a gun game goes through a list of weapons, you know, usually like 20 or something like that. We're just going to do 5 to keep it simple so we can test it. And I want to use the ballistic guns in Fortnite. And so if I open up a browser here and just type in UEFN ballistic weapons, it's going to show me a list of weapons. These are the new ballistic weapons that Fortnite released that are more like competitive first person type of weapons. Like the gun control is really good. They're really fun and good to work with. If you use other guns in first person mode, some work okay, some don't, but these weapons are really fantastic, designed for first person mode. So this is the Fortnite update ecosystem webpage. You can actually look at the list of them here by clicking on this, doing a search. I've got enough information here that I'm just going to use that really easily. So I'm going to go back to UEFN, and what I'm going to do is click my item granter, click my outliner to make sure it's selected, okay? And if I press F2, I can actually rename this. I'm going to rename this to weapon granter. And also, I don't like how messy my project's getting, so I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup at this point. I'm going to right-click the top level folder and create a new folder. And I'm going to create a folder called environment and another folder called game. Anything related to game and logic will go into the game. Anything related to like visuals and stuff will go into the environment. So these grid planes, this ground you see out here, that's just going to go into environment. And then I'm going to take these point lights and I'm going to right click and say move to environment. And then this underground tunnel itself, I can move into environment. I can minimize that and just drag it in like so. And let's see what else we got here. That's looking all right. Now I'm gonna take the first person camera, the gun game, that's our device, put that into game. NPC spawner goes into game. The spawn pads go into game. And the island settings I'll put into game. Level bounds, don't need to worry about that. Weapon granter, it's gonna go into game. The level bounds, that's there automatically, and the world data layers, world partition minimap, just leave those in. We don't need to touch those, just some artifact files that serve various purposes. And here we go, here's our files. Looks a lot cleaner, okay? Now back to our weapon granter. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick 5 weapons and just put them here in this item list. So I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one thing you should always know about programming is the first element in a list, or what we call an array, always starts with 0. Always starts with 0. So it's very important to know that as a programmer and as we go on here. So let's go ahead and put the first one in here. I'm gonna expand this and I'm gonna type in Striker AR, like so. And element number 2, we're gonna say Nemesis AR. And the key word for those ballistic weapons is modular. You're gonna see that word modular on it. You can know that's how it's a ballistic weapon. For weapon number 3, there are other weapons too you could pick in here. You don't have to pick the ballistics. I'm gonna say Ranger pistol, like so. And number 4, we're gonna say Frenzy Auto, but I want the modular Frenzy Auto. And lastly, let's go ahead and say Thunderburst, modular Thunderburst SMG. So we have 5 weapons here, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember, it ends at 4 because we're starting at 0. Very important. Later on, you'll find out here. We're going to save this here. Now, these settings here can all stay the same. Yes, I do want to clear the inventory whenever a new gun's granted, etc. Okay, and I automatically want to equip the item. Otherwise, the player would have to do that, right? When I shoot somebody and they get eliminated, I want my weapon to be automatically equipped. So I'm going to turn that on. It's always wrong. We do need to change the setting. And it's always good to go look at the settings on any device that you are using, okay? So I like that. We're not going to turn on grant on game start because we're just going to do that in code, okay? So there's our elements right there. That's looking pretty good. One thing I know it's going to be a problem already is the ammunition. I want to give people unlimited ammo. So I'm going to go to my island settings and I'm going to go to the details here and I'm going to type in ammo, okay? And we're going to look at infinite reserve ammo. I don't want infinite magazine ammo because then you would never have to reload. That changes the gameplay. But infinite reserve ammo is just basically infinite ammo in your inventory, and you can keep shooting and reloading as often as you want. I'm gonna close out of that there. Okay, so now we've got a list of 5 guns, but we're not actually giving them to the player. We've got to write some code, some real code here, right? Because we're not done with our list. Remember, our list says that we have to spawn with a weapon. So even though I've got the weapons there, we're not spawning yet. So it's time to do that now. All right. And so what we're going to do here, let me just get ready, is I'm going to press enter here on our code file. Okay. And again, you're not expected to understand any of this. I'll explain it as I go. But we're just getting rolling here. So I'm going to say the @ sign here. I'm going to say editable, call this weapon granter. It's an item granter device equals item granter device, and then these 2 curly braces. And I'm going to explain this here. The keyword editable means that it allows us in UEFN to actually drag an object into our code. That's crazy, right? Like lines of text and you're dragging an object into it, but that's how it works. We're going to drag an object into that. This is the name that I'm giving to this. I could call this anything I want. I can call this, llama llama ding dong if I want. It doesn't matter. That's my name. And in verse, the convention is variable names like this should start with capital letters here on each word. Okay. Item granter device, that's actually the type of device we're using. And the underscores here, this is exact name. This name has to match exactly. If I type in the wrong name, you're going to get a red squiggly, okay? These devices, if I hold down control and click, it's going to take me to this Fortnite digest file that shows all the devices that are available and their official names, okay? All their official names. So that's one. Here's another one. Okay, these are devices. In our case here, item granter device is what we're using. So that's great. We have it here, but what do we need to do? Well, when the player spawns, we need to give them the weapon. How do we do that? Well, we can listen for a spawn event, actually. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make another @editable called spawners. And these are going to be called this is going to be an array, a list of player spawner devices, okay? So I'm going to use a new syntax here with these square braces. And we're going to say player spawner device, that's the official name, equals array. And with the curly braces, we're making an empty array at this point of spawners, because what's going to happen is we're going to drag spawners into this list in the editor. So before this gets really crazy and confusing, let's do that now. We got these 2 editables here. Let's go back to our game. And we need to go to verse, build verse code. If we don't build the code, it won't update. Our device won't update so we can do things with it, okay? Now, if I click the gun game, that's my device, the device we created, the code that we're writing, you're gonna now see 2 different new things on here. These weren't here before, but we built the code and then we compiled it. So for the weapon granter, all right, I want to select, hey, my weapon granter. It's the thing we created earlier. It's right here. And the reason why it's only popping up the 1 is because it knows what it's looking for. It knows we're looking for an item granter. If we had 10 different item granters, they would all be listed here. So I'm going to click weapon granter like so. And then spawners, well, in our case right now, we only have 2. In a bigger game, we might have 5 or 10, and you would just add them all. And while we're here, I don't think 2 players should probably face each other like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this guy. You know what, let's just move this guy back here, and just down a little bit like so. That's good enough. And then this feller, let's just move it over here and back a little bit like so. Boom. Okay. Moved our 2 players. And now what we're going to do is actually rename these 2. I don't like the naming, so I'm going to say spawner 1. And then I'm going to say spawner 2. Now, if you name it like this with numbers at the end, here's the really cool thing. If I duplicate this, holding down Alt and dragging, notice here on the right-hand side, it now says spawner 3. I'm going to delete that, but it adds that for you automatically, which is why I changed the name, so it would just look nicer in our code here or in our project. So gun game, and we have 2 spawners, so I'm going to click that twice. Index 0 is going to be spawner 1, and index 1 is going to be spawner 2. Now I know that's confusing, right? You're like, why is there a 1 and a 2? But you said 0 and 1. That's because I started with the number 1 on here. You could have started spawner 0, then spawner 1 if it confuses you at all. but that's what's happening here. I'm gonna save this. Now, still nothing's gonna happen when we start the game in terms of what we've done so far, because we haven't actually told it to do anything. We're just saying, hey, and by the way, you can drag to minimize this, give yourself more space. We just have them in here, but now we actually need to use them. So what I want to have happen is I want to listen for the spawn events. And whenever a player spawns, let's just give them a weapon, okay? So what I want to do is create a brand new function. We're going to call this onPlayerSpawned, like so. And I'm going to type in some words here, and I'll explain it. Okay. OnPlayerSpawned is the name of a function. It's basically something that we can call. It's going to perform an action for us, okay? And I'm putting it in a different function because we need to use this in multiple ways later on. And so what I want to do is listen for the spawn events. So up here in this first function, I'm going to delete our test code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for each spawner in spawners, all right, we're going to say spawner.spawnedEvent.subscribe. And I'm going to pass in that new function. I'm going to press tab to autocomplete. I'm going to pass in that new function that we were just given here, or that we just created on player spawned. This is a for loop, more or less. Basically, it's iterating through our spawners here, going through each one, and then saying, hey, I want to listen for all the spawn events. If you only did one spawner, only the players who come out of that spawn pad are actually going to get the weapon. But remember, people die and they respawn, and it picks random spawners. And so anytime someone spawns in any spawn pad, we need to make sure we listen for that so we can give them a weapon, okay? So we want to listen for the spawned event. Now, this is a name I gave in the for loop. I could have called this blah, blah, like so, and then I'd have to say blah, blah. Because what's happening is it's going through the list and creating a temporary variable that we can use. That's all. So this is a name we gave. Again, you don't have to have this memorized. Just go with the flow, have fun, take some time to learn. Spawn event, subscribe, okay? So that's what we're doing here. Now you're gonna see this squiggly here. It's because we have an error. This is a syntax error. We can't actually do anything yet because this is erroring out here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna type in the word block with a colon just to get rid of the error for now. And a block is just a code block, and so it's really doing nothing at this point, but I just want that error gone. So a little programmer trick there for you. So on player spawned, okay? And what we want to do is grant a weapon to the player. So how would we do that normally? Well, also, by the way, one more thing very important that I forgot to mention is the spawner is going to tell us the player that spawned. In this case, it's called an agent. Agent is a keyword used in diverse programming language to reference things like NPCs or players or animals even. And there's also a player keyword as well too, which is very similar to an agent, which we'll use in just a minute here. But just know the player that spawns, it is giving us that player here in code so we can do something with it. So in our case here, just for a test run, I always like to test my code and my game along the way. I don't just write it all and then test it at the end. So what I want to do is just for a test is give the player a weapon when they spawn so we can check that off the list here, all right? So I'm going to say weapon granter dot grant item to the agent, okay? I'm going to grant an item to the agent. Now, I'm not going to run this just yet because if you run the code, it's not going to work. And that's because we're in an edit session. Now, if I publish this game, it would work. But when you're in an edit session like so, with a player walking around, you're actually already in the map and it may not use the spawner or the spawn event. And so we just want to cover ourselves for when we're testing as well too. So what I want to do is I want to get all the players that are currently in the game, which is just me, and I want to force the spawn event on them. That way they're guaranteed to get a gun in the edit session in our testing, okay? So go ahead and run it right now. You'll see you probably won't get a gun, okay? So what we're going to do here, but this code is needed for the game that we publish, okay? So we're just going to write some backup code for our testing here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say all players. I'm going to create what's called a constant. A constant is like going to hold some data and it can't be changed, okay? You can only assign to it once. And using the colon equal sign, and I'm going to say get play space dot get players. The play space is given to us from Fortnite, and it's going to get all the players in the session, which in this case is just us right now, okay? And then what I'm going to do is another for loop. We're going to say for each player in all players. And if you're not getting this autocomplete on here like I am, which may be the case, I do use a custom tool called GitHub Copilot, and it has AI that keeps memorizing your code and getting better and smarter so you can type less code as you go on. Really handy tool. It does cost money, but I use it in all my development. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say for each player in all players, and we're just going to call on player spawned. Okay, now here's our code, but this is kind of interesting. It's like, wait a minute, get players. If I control click on this, it's actually giving me back a player. It's not giving me an agent. It's giving me a list of players or an array. Anytime you see this here, like in front of the word player, that means it's an array or a list. So getting players is giving me a list of players, but how does this even work? Because this is asking for an agent. And that's because a player is also an agent. An agent is not necessarily a player. Remember, an agent can be a car, or it could be an NPC, or it could be a wild boar or a raptor, a dinosaur, right? But it may not be a player. But in this case here, player is an agent. And so that's why this function just works automatically. Fortnite knows what we're trying to do here. And so we're getting all the players in the session. And then what we're doing is we are spawning them. When the player spawns, we are giving them a weapon. That's what we want to test. And now we're covering the edit session, and we're covering it in a normal case when somebody dies and they respawn. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, and we're going to go to verse, build verse code, like so. And we're going to push our verse changes. But also notice here, 33 changes have been sent to the edit session. One unsupported property has been modified. One asset is newly referenced, and some changes have been disallowed. So actually, it's going to be more important for us to push those changes because we've got some things that are not going to be reflected in the play session. So I'm clicking push changes now. As you can see, I just loaded into the game and I have a weapon in my hands. So our code did work, which is great. And there we go. Pretty cool, right? And you'll notice a few other things. We have got unlimited ammo. Notice also that the walls aren't being destroyed, which is nice. And also notice how it's just brighter in here. I know it looks weird, right? You got these floating point lights. And again, I didn't make it realistic. I didn't add like light fixtures and things. But just to make this easy, I added some lights and a little more brighter. Lighting is a whole different discussion. And we're just keeping it simple for now. So that definitely worked. So we have successfully, according to our list, we've successfully spawned with a weapon. That's great. And then the next one says, when you get an elimination, you move on to the next weapon. So that's what we're going to do now. So things are going to get a little bit tricky now. But again, I'm with you. We've got this. This takes time to learn. So we want to know when we eliminate somebody, and we're going to use our bot in this case, our NPC, that we get the new weapon. Well, that gets me starting to think about, okay, well, shoot, you know, when we go through the weapons, we got to keep track of the weapons, right? Like how many do we need to win and things like that. And so we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to add another @editable called elims to win of type int. And we're going to say 5. Okay. How many eliminations do you need to win? All right. That's the name of my variable. I made it editable so it's available in the UEFN editor. Int is short for integer. This is the type, okay? Just like this is a type here. This is a player spawner device, and this is an item granter device. In this case here, it's a number, an int. Integers do not have decimals. They're just whole numbers like this, okay? And then I'm making it equal to 5. We're gonna need this, so let's just put that in there now. You could, of course, change this as the game changes. Now, we need a way to track when you've made an elimination. We could track when you were eliminated and then see who did it, but that's not the best way to do it. I just want to know only when we make an elimination. So what I'm going to do is back here in UEFN, and by the way, when you're scrolling around with your right mouse and the arrow keys, if you zoom in with the scroll wheel or scroll up and scroll down, it goes faster or slower. And you'll notice on the right hand side up here, this camera speed changes when you're scrolling, okay? Scroll fast, scroll slow, okay? And what I want to do is in my devices folder here at the bottom left, I'm going to type in elim, and you're going to see this elimination manager. Okay. We actually don't need to do anything with this except drag it in the project. I've saved the project here. Okay. Back to our code. And now we could do this all in code without the elimination manager, but the elimination manager makes it easier. I'm going to go over here to @editable, and I'm going to say elim manager, and I'm going to call this elimination manager device. See how there's like this autocomplete for me here? You may have some of those features. I definitely have these features because of the GitHub Copilot, which gets smarter and smarter as I write more code. So elimination manager device equals elimination manager device curly braces. And the curly braces, basically, they're creating a copy, almost like a blueprint in a car factory. You've got the blueprint of how to make the car, but then you actually have to make the car, right? So you have the blueprint, and then by putting on the curly braces, it's like the factory's actually making a copy of the car. It's actually in real life now. So that's what's happening here. In memory, we've got a new device here, which will be replaced by the one that we drag in from the editor. So elim manager right there. Now, all I want to do is check when a player made an elimination. And so this is an event that we're going to have to subscribe to. So I already know I'm going to need a function for the event. So I'm going to say on player made elimination, like so. I'm making a whole new function here, okay? And I'm going to pass in an agent. That's my variable name I'm giving it. I'm going to put a question mark here and type in the word agent and say void equals. Don't worry about the void equals, things like that. That's just the syntax. You'll learn this as you go along. But the question mark definitely is new because you notice here there's no question mark. And that's because when the spawner spawns, I'm guaranteed to get an agent. I'm guaranteed to get a player. In this case here, on player made elimination, like I may not get back a player, right? It's something else could have happened, especially like in the cases like whether you're eliminating or being eliminated, like, you know, imagine if like the world explodes or a barrel, you shoot a barrel that's standing next to you and you kill yourself, right? There's a bunch of different scenarios. And in some cases, maybe it's not, maybe you didn't get an agent and it comes back null or void, you know, nil. So that means we may not get something back. So we're going to have to account for that. And what we want to do is we want to say, hey, if I get an elimination, we need to go to the next gun, right? So this is looking pretty good, right? Like I need to make an elimination. So let's go ahead and over here in our onBegin function, what I want to do, you can put this anywhere really, but I'm going to say elim manager dot it's already pulling up here, right? Eliminated event dot subscribe, like so, on player made. My autocomplete ended. On player made elimination. And for now, I can just put the block keyword in here to make this go away. So on player made elimination. Let's see here. On player made elimination. That looks good to me. It's yelling at me. Hold on. Every programmer gets compiler errors. This is good for you to see. This function parameter expects a value of type agent void, but this argument is incompatible of type agent void. I think I may have done this slightly incorrectly. Let's take a look here. Elim manager. Oh yeah, I typed in the wrong thing. Be very careful. It's elimination event. If I control click this, it's going to take me to the code that Fortnite wrote. And I typed in the wrong one. I typed in the event when you get eliminated, when I needed to type in the event of when I eliminate something or someone else. So notice how this one has a question mark and this one doesn't. So it was giving me a compiler error because I was using the wrong function. So always, when you get those squigglies, here's a fun fact. Always read the squigglies. Don't be like, oh, it's too overwhelming. Just read the words and it'll tell you exactly what's going on most of the time. Okay, so on player made elimination, we've got this function here, but guess what? I'm not even tracking like, you know, where are we? Like, are we on the first weapon? Are we on the second weapon? Like, how do I actually know? So as a programmer, I did what I was supposed to. I was like, oh, when you get an elimination, let's listen for it, but I can't proceed until I have more code. So that also happens as a programmer too, is you run into walls and then you have to build the next thing to get over the wall. So in our case here, we need to track the players and where they, how many weapons, what weapon index they're currently on, things like that. So I'm gonna create a new variable by using the var keyword. Variable means it can change, okay? And the reason why we want it to change is because if you start a game with 5 players, maybe one of them leaves, maybe a new player joins, it's always gonna be changing, whereas other things won't change. Like the elimination manager, that's always gonna be there in the game, never gonna change. There's no var keyword on it because it's never gonna change. So what we're gonna call this is player score, all right? You can call it player index or current player weapons, whatever, colon, square braces, the word player, lowercase, the word int equals map. Now, maps are a little bit complicated, and we're not going to go super in depth on it here, but it's a key and a value. So think of a map like a dictionary. You open up a dictionary like with words, and you're like, okay, I need to find the word, smoothie. Starts with an S. So you flip through the book until you get to the S's, and you go down, and then you have the keyword smoothie. And then it's going to give it a description of it in the dictionary, right? A smoothie is a drink that involves fruit and often milk and blah, 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 blah. Same thing here. We have a key and a value. And in Fortnite, a player is actually a unique key. Every player that joins your game has a unique identifier. I could have made the key a string, like words, like a string of very unique words to make it stand out. But in our case here, Fortnite's done the work for us, and they've made a player a unique index, okay? And what we're gonna do is store an integer for the value. And that's just gonna be the index of the weapon, right? So for instance, if we're on the first weapon, it's gonna be a 0. If we're on the second weapon, it's gonna be a 1, 3, 4, whatever. So we're gonna basically, all we're doing here, right here, we are storing each player's score. That's it. That's all we're doing here with this map. I know it's confusing. You don't have to understand it just yet, okay? So we want to know what the player's score is when they get an elimination or join the game, or so they can win as well too. All right, so we've got that, but like, how do we use it? Like, shouldn't we be keeping track of the player's first weapon and what happens when they get an elimination? Should we add another one? Like, how do we do all that? Well, the first thing I want to do is just make sure that we at least give the player the weapon for the particular index that they're on, okay? So we're gonna write some more code on player spawned, okay? So I'm gonna just delete this for now, on player spawned, and you just got to follow along with me for just a moment, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I go along. So if player equals player agent, so in this case here, I need to convert this agent to a player. I have to guarantee that it's a player and not a hog or a dinosaur, okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, if if player score, my bad. If player score player with a capital P, all right, we're gonna grant a weapon. So we're gonna go to the weapon granter dot grant item. Now, one problem here though is it doesn't know which one to do, right? So we can't do the same thing we did last time. And I wrote this out just so you could kind of see that, right? Like, oh shoot, it's not doing what I need to do. I need to actually grant a weapon at a proper index. So I'm kind of blocked here again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just for fun, I'm gonna hold control and press the backslash button, and it's gonna comment out that line of code because we're not gonna need it, but I kind of still want it there. Comments are in green and they don't run in your game, okay? It's just comments to yourself. And so like, for instance, I can put this hashtag here and I can say convert agent to player. And then here, I can say, if the player already exists, grant the weapon. And that's what's happening here. We're saying if player score. So the reason why we use the if keyword is because the player might not be in there yet. This may be a new player who just joined the game. We don't know. And if it is a new player who just joined the game, they just spawned for the very first time, they're actually not going to be in that list. And so this would fail. So we're seeing if they're already in the list, let's give them a weapon, okay? And then what I'd like to do is make sure that we actually grant a weapon. So I'm going to create a new function here called grant weapon. I'm going to pass in a player of type player. Now again, this is my name. I could have called this anything I want. I'm just naming it player, so don't get confused. A lot of new programmers get confused. when they see like, oh, why is there a player with a capital P and a carrier with lowercase p? This could have been anything. I could have said blah. It doesn't matter. That's the name I'm giving it, but this has to be named correctly. This is the type, okay? And void equals, and what we're gonna do is this. We're gonna say if weapon IDX short for index, colon equals, and we're gonna say player score, player. Okay, so what we're doing is we're grabbing the index of the weapon for that player. So if I killed 2 people, right, my index is going to go to 1 and then to 2. And so that number is going to go up, and that's what I'm grabbing. I'm grabbing the current player's index, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say weapon granter dot grant item index. And it requires 2 things. It requires the player, and it requires the weapon index, or an integer. So if I control click this, grant item index, you're gonna see that's actually a function that you can call inside of an item granter device, okay? It's a pre-built function that Epic Games wrote. I didn't write this code. And you may be wondering, Mark, how do I know what all the features are? Well, one thing you could do is you can go to the Fortnite digest file here, and you can look at all the devices and all the functions, and you can see what's available. Some of these things just take experience. In our case here, that weapon granter we dragged in, we're just trying to give it a weapon at a particular index. So if I go to my weapon granter here and I say, let's say I've killed 2 people. So I killed someone with this gun, I killed someone with this gun. So that means I should be on index number 2. So 0, 1, 2. 2 is the index I need to assign, because that's the order in the weapon thing. If I switch these around, it's gonna be a different gun. The order that I put things in this list is very important because I'm using indexes to tell us what we should grant. So back to our code, gungame.verse. What we're doing is we're granting an item at the particular index, and I'm just gonna write some comments here so you can reinforce it in your brain, okay? Get current weapon index for that player, and then I'm going to say grant the proper weapon. Okay, so we're going to grant a weapon. So if I go over here to on player spawned, like so, now instead of calling the item granter like here, I'm just going to say grant weapon, and I'm going to pass in the player. Remember, I took the agent that spawned. It is a player, but my function here doesn't do the conversion between players and agents. I need it to be a player, so I convert it to a player, and then I pass it into the grant weapon function, okay? So we're doing really great now, but this is only for players who exist. What about new players who are just joining the game or spawning for the first time? So we need to do that now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make an else if, so you can, and by the way, indenting is very important in verse. I'm going to say else if, all right, and what we're going to do is we're going to say parentheses set player score player, okay, equals 0, and then we're going to grant the weapon. Okay, I'm going to press enter here. Remember, indenting is important. I'm just opening this up a little more for readability for you. I'm going to say if the player does not exist, create this is my GitHub giving me suggestions. If the player does not exist, my co-pilot, create the player and grant the weapon. Okay, so this is really important because if a new player is joining the game, we got to say, hey, we got to store their score, right? We got to make sure that they are inside of the data. Like if you had someone join the game and you didn't say, hey, let's start tracking that player, then they wouldn't get guns, they wouldn't get anything. So we are making sure that, hey, if it's an existing player, grant them the appropriate weapon. And of course, we're keeping score, right? Like when you get an elimination, it's going to increase your score. We have not written that code yet, but we're going to grant a weapon. Otherwise, if it's a new player, this is really important. We're setting their very first index to 0. If I set this to 1, it would grant them the next weapon in the line. So we're starting at the beginning if you're a new player, and then we go ahead and give the weapon. If I did not do this, and then we came into the weapon granter, this code would not run because the player actually doesn't exist in our map yet. Okay, so we're initializing the map when a new player joins. So new player, let's grant them a weapon. Now, at this point in time, That's all fine and dandy, but we've got to increase your score when you get an elimination. Remember how we ran into that roadblock? We're like, I can't do anything because I'm not actually tracking the weapons yet. Well, now we can get past that roadblock because we wrote the code needed to store the data, to store the player. So that's very exciting. And what we want to do is, let's go look at our list here. Where did I put my list? So when you get an elimination, you move on to the next weapon. So yeah, number 4, it could have probably have been up here with number 2, but we're probably going to solve this one on our own, like automatically. When you get an elimination, you move on to the next weapon. We just haven't done that yet. So let's do that now. So in on player made elimination, when I make an elimination, not when I get killed, but when I make one, we want to increase the score. And the codes, we're going to write some more code here. It might be overwhelming, but just take it slow. Okay, take it slow. It's fine. We're going to say if, I'm going to say killer, the killer. To be clear, that's me. So if the killer, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking this agent here. Remember how this one's different because that's a question mark? It may not, nothing may be there. It might not actually be an agent, okay? So that's really important. So what I'm doing here is I have to put the question mark again in these square braces to say, hey, just so you know, there might not be data in this. And that's why I have to use an if statement because it's not guaranteed. And so we're taking this agent and we're trying to convert it to a player. Okay, we only want to give an elimination if we've killed another player. So that's what's happening here. And we're converting it. Okay, we're converting that to a player. So this I could have called player, but I want to call it the killer because I want it to be very clear that that's what we're working with here is the person who made the elimination. I didn't want to say player made elimination. Killer is just easier. Okay. Now what we're going to do, say if var idx of type int equals player score killer. So remember that we can use a player as a key, a unique key, that unique ID. So just like we did before, down here where we're grabbing the weapon index, what we're doing here is we're going to get the current weapon index for the player. So get current weapon index for that player. So we're going to say, hey, what weapon is this player on? What weapon is the killer on? Because, right, we need to go to the next weapon. And I'm making this a var because I want to change it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say set idx plus equals 1. We're setting this variable. The keyword set means we're setting data, and you can only do it on the variables. And we're taking the current index and adding 1 to it. Okay, so if the current index was 1, we're saying take 1 and then add 1 more. That's what the plus equals does. Okay, it's just a shorthand way of doing this, saying set idx equals idx plus 1. Instead of having to write out the whole thing, we're just saying plus equals 1. Like so. Okay, we're going to increase the score. Now, what happens if it goes too high? We could have won the game, right? So we do have to account for that as well too. So we just need to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say if set player score killer equals our new IDX. And I'm just going to put curly braces here because we don't need to actually run any code underneath it. It's doing everything it needs to do here. And the reason why it's an if statement is because the player might not be in this map. You always have to, in a map or an array, you always have to check first because it may not be there. So what we're doing is we're just updating the score with the new one, plus 1. We're storing it back in. If you don't do this, they're going to keep getting the same weapon over and over. It's very critical, actually. First for completion, I'm going to say increment the weapon index. And then here, look at this. My GitHub Copilot is just being magical. If the players reach the max weapon index and the game, that's actually not correct. It's being too smart and it's actually dumb. We're going to say set the new index for the player. All right. Then we can check if we want to end the game or not. So we're going to say if IDX is greater than or equal to elims to win, that's the variable we created above, which is currently 5. So if our current weapon index is greater than or equal to the limit, we know we can end the game, which we're not quite ready to do yet. So I'm going to put a comment here. We're just going to say end the game. All right. So if this person won the game, let's do this. Otherwise, else, we're going to say grant weapon. Because we updated the index with a new weapon, this code we already wrote, it's just going to know what to do, because that code just takes an index, your current index, and gives you the weapon. Well, we increased the index, we saved it, and so grant weapon is just going to do whatever it needs to do, which is really, really nice. So I think we're in a good place to test this. We wrote a bit of code. Let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to save it. We're going to go to verse, build verse code. And I have more changes in here. It may work, it may not, just with the code, but just because it has these yellow changes here, I'm going to push anyway, and we'll see what happens. And I've got my gun. Excellent. And let's see if the spawner guy goes. Okay, let's shoot. Oh no, we have a bug. We have a bug that we have to fix. My gun did not change. What is happening here? This is not good. So I'm going to go here to end the game and see what's going on. We've got a bug and we've got a debug. Now, what could be the problem? I have an idea. If I go over to my gun game, okay, see how we have a new device here, elim manager. Okay, I never actually connected it. Even though we wrote the code for it, if you remember right, we added that elim manager. I never actually connected it here in the editor, which is a big problem. So I'm gonna click this and click elimination manager because it wasn't detecting my elimination. So when you have bugs like this, you need to be able to go in and see where the problem is. It could be in the code. It could also be in your editor. There could be a series of issues. And notice how it didn't tell us what was wrong. There was no error. Nothing said, hey, you didn't drag this object in, right? So this is something you have to be very mindful of. So with that in there, I should be able to just play the game and see what happens. So, and what I'm going to do is shoot this bot again. Oh, and this time, look, I do have the guns. This is excellent. So it is working now. I fixed the bug. Here's my different pistols, or weapons, I mean. Getting closer. So we got our frenzy shotgun. Boom, boom, boom. And then we have our burst SMG. And that worked. Notice how at the end of that, nothing happened. That's because we've reached the end of our list. But we didn't end the game yet. So end the round. So what I want to do is end the round. And we're going to need one more thing for that. So in our devices folder on the left side here in the content browser, we want to search for round, the word round, and round settings. And on this device, we literally don't need to do anything at all. We just need to go into our code now that the device is in there. And what we want to do is reference that round settings device and then end the round when it needs to end. So at editable, round settings device, like so. And just tab it through here. Now, if you're feeling extra adventurous, pause the video, and I want you to take this round settings device and figure out how to end the round. If you're feeling adventurous and actually want to really learn, pause it, end your round. Look at the code behind it, look at the functions that are available, figure out where you need to put this code to make it happen. Pause it right now, and then come back and see if you did it the same way that I did. All right, here we go. I know you didn't pause it, but that's okay. Round settings device, okay? Like so. We want to end the round. Well, how do we do that? We're just going to, it's actually pretty simple here. We already wrote the comment for it, right? So what we want to do is say, where it says end the game, we want to say round settings dot end round for the killer. So again, grabbing the killer player, they just got an elimination. And we've increased the index, we've set it, and we're saying, hey, is your index greater than or equal to what we need in order to win? If it is, let's just end the round. So I'm gonna save this here. The last little thing we need to do here before we test it is go to our gun game device, okay? And go to round settings and just select your round settings device. You gotta drag it in there and connect it. And then you can go ahead and push changes and build the game and see what happens. Let's do that now. Okay, here is the moment of truth. What we're gonna do is we are going to see if we can win the game. So there's one elimination. Weapon change, excellent. Here is 2 eliminations. All right, looking good, looking good. Here is 3 eliminations, boom. All right, auto frenzy, let's do this. 4, boom, boom. Okay, one more moment of truth. Here we go. And, oh, I'm missing my shots. Okay, we did it. The game has ended. The rounds ended. All of our code works. We've done everything that we needed to do to build a fully complete game, first-person shooter with code and everything in between. And there's so much more you can do. Like, you can go into this project, for instance, and look at these devices. Like, look at all of them. Like, go into all the devices here. I'm just highlighting all of them here, like so. Boom, like this. And you can just go in and drag stuff in and test it out. Like accolades, that's XP. Like, you could drag in XP when people get eliminations. You can award XP. Play with the code, play with the devices. The choice is yours. And if you want to learn even more and take things to the next level, check out this video right here. See you next time. The needle tears a hole, that old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything.